Sarkeesian and the United Nations are a perfect couple. They deserve each other in full. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Freedom Alternative. You probably all know by now that professional victimology experts and generally plain old cunts Anita Sarkeesian and Quinn have been given a platform at the United Nations to spout their bullshit that I'm not even sure they themselves believe in anyway. Their speeches went as expected, with the whole arsenal of logical fallacies and downright lies, although they did include some new gems, or at least new to me. One such gem is this assertion that the fact that I say on YouTube that Anita Sarkeesian sucks is harassment, which brings a whole new level of stupidity in this woman's discourse. But anyway, I'm not going to dissect their assertions or go through all the nonsensical claims and the totalitarian proposals that emerged from the UN following this event. I will take the liberty to assume that this audience is smart enough to know this already. And no, this is not me being arrogant or building an echo chamber, it's me expecting my audience to have at least the intelligence level of a 15-year-old. I mean, seriously, it's not rocket science to know that claims such as 73% of all women globally have experienced online violence is bullshit. More than half of all women globally have never used the internet, since the total number of internet users on this planet is around 3 billion. It also doesn't take a genius to know that being gang raped and being trolled on Twitter are not the same thing. Also, emotional bandwidth? It takes 5 seconds to Google the term and see it's just another bullshit term based on junk science. For these reasons, I won't go through their claims. It's pointless. It's just pampered, middle-class left-wing pricks with no grasp whatsoever about the realities of this planet complaining that someone was mean with them on the internet. These pansies deserve to be treated with utter contempt and disdain. But here's the catch. This applies not just to the Sarkeesian and Quinn, but to the entire United Nations. That's why I say they deserve each other. You see, if we put things into the proper perspective, we should ask what took the UN so long to bring Sarkeesian on board. Because when one takes the UN's actions and puts them into perspective, the UN looks like a giant bureaucratic Sarkeesian. If you can imagine that. You think I'm exaggerating? Let's just take a few gems. The UN, through its infamous Commission on Human Rights, is currently investigating Great Britain over alleged breaches of human rights because, you see, it's a breach of human rights to cut down from the gigantic welfare state that could crush the country if left unfettered. Some may wonder how much does Lesotho or Lebanon or Bangladesh pays in disability rights, and whether such investigations are launched in those countries every time they reform their own systems. But if you ask that question publicly, you're a racist, because, you see, only the West is at fault. And who leads the Commission on Human Rights that now investigates Britain? Oh, it's Saudi Arabia, a country with an impeccable track record of respecting human rights, particularly free speech, a human right highly cherished by the esteemed Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Commission Against Torture recently launched an investigation on Switzerland over allegations of torture, because we all know Switzerland is a warmongering nation that routinely employs torture. What's Switzerland's crime? They have a few slightly crowded prisons and, you see, that's torture. Switzerland also didn't provide luxurious hotels to youths and asylum seekers, unlike Germany, which uses taxpayers' money to nationalize Baroque castles to house migrants in them. That would be in addition to leaving its own citizens homeless to make room for diversity. Also, Switzerland had the audacity to limit the freedom of movement of the youths until their legal status is settled. You see, that's torture. Meanwhile, Brazil has prison occupation rates going well into 400%, Russia still has a tuberculosis epidemic in its prison system, and China keeps a lower occupation rate by using the two most common Bolshevik methods, doctoring the data and shooting some of them in the head. But you won't see a United Nations investigation in those places because that's not kosher. Little Switzerland, who is by far the most supporting nation of anti-torture policies in the world, is the low-hanging fruit after which the UN will go in order to allow the useless cockroaches in the Commission Against Torture to pat themselves on the back a bit more that their work is making the world a better place. And it's not just the small commissions and committees that are messed up. It's the whole UN itself. Have you seen the UN General Assembly chastising with resolutions countries like, I don't know, Venezuela, Honduras, Qatar, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Malaysia, or Kuwait for breaches of human rights? No? Well, that's because it doesn't happen too often, if it happens at all. What you do see is the UN General Assembly's voting system being rigged by Jew-hating Quran-based nations to pass countless resolutions on the only country in the Middle East where Arabs actually do have human rights. Although it's not just the Arab group. Multiple gullible fools take part in this charade, most of them convinced by Pallywood, but some of them from their own ideological convictions. They hate Jews so much that they won't agree with Israel even if Israel says that 2 plus 2 equals 4. They'll insist that 4 is a Jewish Zionist conspiracy. The rampant Jew hatred is another aspect where the UN and Anita Sarkeesian deserve each other. Anita's producer, Jonathan McIntosh, is an established anti-Semite and an established defender of Islamic violence and terrorism, just like the United Nations. McIntosh, the de facto creator of Feminist Frequency, which is Anita's online persona, is on record with defending the murderous jihadis at Charlie Hebdo, and also on record for criticizing anyone who dares to share cartoons depicting the Prophet Muhammad, as well as for promoting outlandish conspiracy theories about Jews and the State of Israel. The report itself also includes somewhere in there, I think on page 6, that it constitutes cyber violence to publish blasphemous content. I wonder which religion is eager to call the UN to cull on blasphemous content. Look, I could go on like this for another hour, but my point is that Anita and Zoe were essentially at home at the United Nations headquarters. These two individuals and the UN are just a bunch of cultural hypocrites with next to no grasp on reality and who genuinely think they have the public on their side, when in reality, nothing could be further from that. Most of the planet regards both the UN and these asshats feminism with utter disdain. Outside of the progressive bubble, nobody gives a flying toss on what the UN thinks or says. And this is true both in the first world and the rest of the planet. If you think the government of, say, Democratic Republic of Congo will give two shits on Anita's report, you're clearly a special kind of stupid. But what about the governments in the first world? One of the subscribers of this channel told me the other day that he fears that the British government will be rubbing its hands over this report to legitimize even further censorship of the internet. And it is a fair point given that Britain has rapidly outpaced Germany in terms of totalitarian laws about the internet, but I don't think this report will actually make a difference. You see, governments who want to take immoral actions will take them anyway and will use any excuse. Strictly in the case of Britain, if this report hadn't emerged, they would have used the same old combating extremism rhetoric. In fact, Theresa May has been flying the banner of combating extremism for almost a year now to get more censorship going over the British internet. Even without this report, there are always excuses. The British firewall, which rivals Iran's firewall, was put in place under the guise of protecting the children. Do you see where I'm going with this? The problem resides in those particular governments, not with the UN. The UN is just a body of a massive bureaucracy with no real power, other than the power given to it through submissive pussies, otherwise known as politicians. Anyway, to sum it up, I really think that the effects of this report on the planet will be minuscule or, more likely, non-existent. The effects on Anita and Zoe will be positive though, as they'll get some more donations as they now have the UN seal of approval as violence survivors, or some nonsense like that. Some are alarmed that Google Ideas seemed at one point to be on board with the idea. Well, if there's any pattern in Google's behavior in the last few years, it's this one. Google tends to eventually side with the market. Why do you think there are so many un-PC channels on YouTube? And I don't refer to my channel, I'm a small fish, but I mean big channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers and with politically incorrect videos with millions of views. If Google were so politically correct, it would simply delete all of them. But they don't do that. Why? Because the market provides incentives to run counter to the PC narrative. Even my small channel has a dozen of reports for hate speech by offended snowflakes, all of them rejected by Google. You see, Google eventually has to make a cost-benefit analysis. Sure, they're a big corporation and that can avoid the cost-benefit analysis in the market for a while, but not forever. And the analysis is simple. It's more profitable for Google to let un-PC content stay than to delete it. You see, the best democracy is the free market. People vote with their time, and they spend watching with the time that they spend watching videos, and advertisers vote with their money to the benefit of content creators and the public. That's YouTube for you. So far, despite some mishaps, Google has quite consistently erred on the side of the market rather than ideological control freaks. Now, sure, that doesn't mean they'll always do that. Google could conceivably just shut down all non-PC channels. But that move is simply too costly and with no clear benefit. That's why I think it doesn't matter that Google Ideas appeared at one moment on Twitter to be on board with this charade. When push will come to shove, profits and cash will be more important than UN whining and Sarkeesian's bollocks. Welcome to the free market, Anita. Enjoy your stay. And with that being said, don't forget to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and throw in some shekels to make special snowflakes cry. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.